Good morning, everyone. It's good to have you on today. You're welcome again to Parkway Projects Limited. Today, we'll be talking about budgeting and financial planning. My name is Christiana Adiosola Laeni, and I would be the one taking you through the program. With me today is Mr. Oluwadamilari Arabambi. So why are we talking budgeting and financial planning today? It's been a year and a half since COVID-19 struck us in Nigeria. A lot of businesses are still navigating its journey through either recession or trying to get back on their feet. The World Bank says that we are looking at a projected growth of 1.8% this year, which is the exact same percentage we had in 2010, meaning that this year will take us back 10 years of growth. What do we expect in the global economy? The global economy is expected to grow at 5.6% this year. And one of the things that has been championing this growth includes tourism, introduction of new technology and all of that. So how exactly do we make use of budgeting in our businesses? And how do we make use of budgeting and financial planning? And how do we use that to grow our business? Today, join me and Damilari as we take you through that journey. Who is Damilari and why is he the best man for this with us? So Damilari is a chartered accountant, is a strategist, and is a finance professional. He has over a decade of experience. He started his journey at Olatubosun Bumi & Co. He started off as an audit trainee there, and fortunately, in 3 years, he was able to rise up the ladder to become an audit senior. He left the audit firm to join Mind Builders. If you live in Lagos, you would know Mind Builders School. He was the youngest professional on that team. And after leaving Mind Builders, he joined a fintech company. So Damilari has been in this game for so long. It's been a decade and more. He is going to take us through how he has helped different businesses in different sectors, fintech, education, agri-tech, to be able to navigate this journey. Welcome on board, Mr. Damilari. It's good to see you again. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr.
Yes, please.
Good morning, everyone. We'll be running through this section together, and while we have Mr. moderate this section. I don't believe you cannot hear me.
At least I can.
Okay, great. So, Mr. You can go ahead.
So yes, we're talking budgeting and budgetary control today. And I know we have a number of things that people would like to know about when it comes to this topic. First of all, let's even save them a lot of English. What are we going to be looking at? Let's start with the word budget. What exactly is a budget for a business? What's a budget? What does it entail?
Okay, so talking about budgets, individuals have budgets, companies have budgets, institutions have budgets. Budget is simply the numerical plans of actions. This simply means that it is not enough to have a plan. This plan, figures, numbers must be attached to them. It is the numbers that are added to these plans that make its budget. Without the numbers, there is nothing about budget. And we'll talk about budget in a layman term. It is the plan of predetermined action This means that you are about to engage on a particular task, you want to achieve a particular objective or goal. You are talking about those things you want to do, putting numbers to them. By putting numbers to them, that is what makes it budget.
So you've heard it. He has explained to us that budget is basically putting into numbers what your plans look like. So okay. Oh yes, and one thing we also have for you is we have some snapshots that we'll be sharing as on the screen that you could easily like take that and write it out or take screenshots and you can save it. We intend to also share the slides with you after the program when we do recordings of the program. So and so from what you've explained to us, a budget basically is putting into numbers what your plan for the business is. How do you now, so I noticed that with that, how do you put into numbers basically what you have for your business? Like what numbers do I even have for my business? Let's even say it like that. I know I'm running numbers with my revenue. I know I'm running numbers with my expenses. Where do I put what in my budget?
Okay. Thank you, Christina. Where do you put what in your budget? Just as I said, putting numbers makes whatever the plans are budget. For whatever you want to do, budget has to do with the quantitative part, meaning that even when you have the qualitative factors to be considered, you need to attach numbers to them so as to be able to really make the plans. Say, for example, you want to go into the business of selling pepper. You ask yourself, how much does a basket of pepper go today? 2,000 naira. Okay, so that means that if it goes for 2,000 naira, that means that for you to sell something worth of 100,000 naira, that means you need to sell about 50 bags, or you need to buy about 50 bags. So putting numbers, knowing the cost of a particular article for those into buying and selling of goods, knowing the amount, knowing the cost of articles would help to extrapolate, to know the cost of such article. And when you're not talking about selling, it costs you 2,000 naira to buy an article. You're not thinking of how much to sell. Then what do? You mark up. By marking up, you are now thinking of the percentage of profits you desire to make. And we are talking about the percentage of profits you desire to make. It's also a function of the nature of the market. And when we talk about nature of the market, it's either a competitive market or a monopoly market. So if it's a competitive market, that would mean that your decision to fix the price is a function of other competitors in the industry. And you know well that in a competitive market, you always be conscious of the prices set by other competitors in the market. And because of that, that goes for your revenue. And for the cost, you look for the cheapest. In the course of this section, I will talk about value for money. Value for money will help more to drive home, to explain, or to shed more light on what Christina said earlier about the effect of COVID and how you can maximize the profit of your business, even in this time you are. You know the cost of performing an action. You need to know the revenue of performing same action. And the difference between the cost and the revenue will determine your profit. Just as I said, how do you now attach figures? How do you attach numbers to this? You attach numbers to this by looking at the cost of buying the article or the cost of setting up such service and the price to charge for rendering such service. You talk about schools today. What are the costs? You look at the quality of teachers you are bringing on board. You look at the infrastructure to put in place, the cost of maintaining such infrastructure, power. Now that we are in the digital age, you need to set up projectors. You need to set up tablets even for the pupils and students. Those are the costs. So what you want to do, make inquiries, carry out your research to know the cost of setting the system up, and vis-a-vis the revenue you you will be earning as the system is, if it is into selling of goods and services, the revenue you make from selling such goods, and also the revenue you make in the case of service, the revenue you make from rendering such service. So budget is the combination of both the inflow, which is the revenue, and the outflow, which is the cost. And not until you have attached the number, just for emphasis, to these two sides, you are not doing budgeting.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been quite extensive. I think at this point, each and every one of us should be able to understand what is budget and what exactly does it stand for. Thank you so much. So there's a word, budgeting, and budgetary control. Like, they sound intertwined, but how are they different? So, because you already explained the budget to us, but I know I've also heard the word budgeting and I've heard the word budgetary control. So, are we looking at just adjectives, or are we looking at things that are different from that? Is it like a process? Is it like a tool set? So, I'm listening. Can you please run us through it?
Thank you so much. I would like to take us back a little bit, looking at budgeting and financial management as the focus of this section is. These two concepts are subset of financial management. I think it would be nice for me to also put that as part of the foundation of this section. Now, what is financial management? Anything that has to do with management of finances, planning, talking about organizing, anything that has to do with managing finances in order to achieve a set goal, organizational goal, personal goal, etc. Now, what is budgeting? What is budgetary control? Now, one of the things budgeting helps us to do is to put us in check. I mean, I'm going to be very practical here. And finance professionals on this call will attest to it. In practice, let's say the head of business walks up to you. Christina, we want to do this. The first question that comes to mind is, do you have this in your budget? I've explained budgeting. I'm just trying to use this scenario to explain budgetary control. Asking that question is a kind of budgetary control. Why did you ask if he has that in his budget? In fact, there's this slogan in practice: if it is not a thing of life and death, we are not doing it if it is not in our budget. You are smiling already, Mr. I mean, that's valid. You ask the head of sales, do you have this in your budget? If the person doesn't have such expense in the budget, you don't have any business with the person. The only time you think of considering such expense is if, number one, it is directly tied to generating more revenue. If it is not directly tied to generating more revenue, that's one. Two, it is a thing of life and death. If it is not an expense that involves the life of the person or the life of the entity, I tell you, we just trash it. Why? Because we have the budget as a check. And before coming up with the budget for the year or for the period, the heads of department submitted their budget for the period. So if you are now coming up to me to tell me to, want to spend this, want to do that, I will not listen to you, because we have the budget there as a check. So what is budgetary control? Budgetary control are the measures put in place to put us in line with whatever we have budgeted for, so that we don't exceed. Now, this will take me further to what we call actual and budgeted, and definition of variance. What is variance today? From that word variance simply means, in a layman's term, how we have deviated from what we have budgeted from the actual. Say, for example, before the beginning of the period, we budgeted that we'll spend 2 million naira on diesel. And already in the period of 12 months now, 6 months have already exceeded, we have already spent 2.2 million. That simply means that we have exceeded our budget for diesel, and that makes that budget unfavorable. Why is it unfavorable? The variance is unfavorable because the actual expense, which is an outflow here, exceeds the budgeted expense, which is also an outflow. In the case of revenue, so let me also do the flip side to that. In a situation where we plan to spend 2 million on diesel, at the end of the period, we ended up spending 1.5 million on diesel, that will mean that that variance there is favorable. Why is it favorable? The actual cost, okay, on diesel is less than the budgeted cost of diesel, which is favorable to the organization because the company has been able to save cost. The other side, which is the revenue part, because you can't talk about budget without talking about the inflow and the outflow. I'm still trying to drive home my point on the difference or the differences between budgeting and budgetary control. Now, on the other side of revenue, we have our budget for, we are going to make these from school fees, and somehow, we did advertisement and we plan to make about 5 million from school fees tuition, and we end up making 5.5 million from tuition. The difference there is 500,000 naira. That difference of 500,000 naira is the favorable variance. In the case of an inflow, I want us to get that well. In the case of an outflow, when the actual is more than the budgeted, it is unfavorable. But in the case of an inflow, you agree with me that everybody likes to smile when they are receiving money. But when it comes to spending money, you see all manners of species of frown. I mean, people frowning. You understand? So, all manners of displeasure when it comes to outflow. So, when your actual inflow, is more than your budgeted inflow, it is favorable. You will be happy. But whenever your actual inflow is less than a budgeted inflow, then it is unfavorable. Why? Because you got more than what you planned to get. And that about budgeting and budgeting control. So budgetary control, there are measures put in place to make sure that at every point in time, we have not spent more than what we budgeted. And also at every point in time, we are making, or at worst, we are making at par with what we are budgeting. And that is why at every point in time, when a finance person is preparing the variance analysis report, you must always put what you have as actual with respect to inflow and outflow side by side with the budgeted inflow and outflow. That will help you to know. The MD can summon the head of sales. Mr. A, look at what the actual is. And when we're actually preparing this budget, we were conservative enough. So if this budget was conservative enough, if we're preparing it, we're very conservative in the preparation, why are we not making this much? Then that can now help us to go further, to look at the factors. You all agree with me on this call that most companies didn't make their revenue, the budgeted revenue for last year, apart from the companies in the health sector. Those companies that sell health stocks. Why? Because some of us were indoor for almost a good time in the year. So that means that COVID, for example, will be a valid excuse. And of course, I'm talking about lag. The effect of COVID is still all over the place. So COVID could be an example, or could be one of the reasons why an entity revenue is unfavorable. The variance of an entity revenue for last year is unfavorable, and the budget and the cost is quite favorable or also unfavorable. Because if the company is unable to make as more than the cost, it will be unfavorable. I would like to mention at this point that it is possible for the company to have an unfavorable inflow. It is possible for an entity to have an unfavorable inflow and also have an unfavorable inflow and also have a favorable bottom line. What does this mean? An entity having an unfavorable inflow simply means that the actual of the company's revenue is far lower than the budgeted revenue. What would help is reducing the cost to the barest minimum, and this is where VFM comes to play. What is VFM? VFM is simply value for money. What is value for money? There are three acronyms to explain value for money. We have the what? We have the effectiveness, we have the word efficiency, and we have the word economical. I'm going to explain these three concepts in less than 2 minutes. We call them the three E's. And this will also help us to understand budgeting and budgetary control well enough. What is effectiveness? Effectiveness is getting things done. So when you get things done, you are effective. Fantastic guy. Yeah, I mean, he has gotten it done. What is efficiency? Efficiency is getting things done at the least possible cost. So this has gone beyond effectiveness. Effectiveness will say, yeah, Damilare has done the stuff. How efficient was Damilare when he was doing the stuff? How much did it cost Damilare to get the stuff done? Christiana has gotten the stuff done. How much did it cost Christiana to get it done? How much did it cost Damilare to get it done? Let's assume it cost Damilare 200 naira to get it done, or 20 minutes to get it done, and it cost Christiana 100 naira to get it done and 5 minutes to get it done. Christiana is more efficient. How is Christiana more efficient? Christiana is more efficient because it costs less for Christiana to get it done. And I want to believe that as, I mean, the difference between effectiveness and efficiency is clear there. What is now economical? Economical simply means that you are putting the cost of getting something done side by side with the benefit. And I would like to say here that one of the fundamentals of budgeting and budgeting control is you perform a task if and only if the benefit exceeds the cost. In this case now, like the example I gave, that the salesperson coming to tell me that I want to do this, and I asked the salesperson, do you have this in your budget? And the guy said no. So if the guy is saying no, that will mean that it will take extra explanation for that thing to be considered done. And one of the things to make it considered done is what is the economical. Mr. Salesperson, is the benefit of doing this thing, is it more than the cost? If the benefit is not more than the cost, then there is no point doing it. We can as well trash it and look for other things to do. So what is budgeting? Making plans, adding figures to it. What is budgetary control? Budgetary control are the measures put in place to make sure when it comes to the inflow part of the revenue, we make more than it. At worst case scenario, we make as part. When we talk about the outflow, we are able to minimize the outflow to the barest minimum. I don't know if anyone has any question, and I want to believe that is very clear. You're muted.
Thank you very much. I want to believe that has clarified every requirement we need to understand when it comes to budgeting and budgetary control. Knowing that budgeting is the tool and the budgetary control process is basically the measures put in place to make sure that we adhere to the budget. So now, are there challenges? Are there challenges when it comes to budgeting? What kind of challenges are we likely to face? And what can we do to at least make it, to minimize it? That's the word. So are there challenges that we are likely to face when we are budgeting to create an effective budget? And what are the things we need to put in place to make sure that we minimize these challenges?
Okay, thank you. What are the challenges of effective budgeting? Number one of the major challenges is employee and stakeholders acceptance. This is end of October. I want to believe most companies now, they will be planning the budget for next year. And planning the budget of next year would mean that every section, both the revenue center and the cost center, we need to come up with a budget for next year. And then we'll talk about budget for next year. That would also mean that it's not enough for you to come up with budget for next year. You must start to defend that budget. And I don't know if anyone has been in a budget defense section before. I mean, somebody asking, why do you need to do this? Why must we do this? Why this? Why that? So that, to an extent, is, or the salesperson, for example, the company is telling you, how can you come up with a budget of 1 billion? Can't you guys make 2 billion? And the guy is like, 2 billion is not an easy thing to me. So the acceptance of budget, it will put everybody on their toes. So employee and stakeholders acceptance is very important. Some companies have come up with a particular budget for a year before, and the board is like, this budget is not ambitious enough. The directors are stakeholders of the entity, and the CEO is saying that this is what we have the capacity to achieve, and they are saying that it's not ambitious enough. So one of the challenges is the employee and the stakeholder accepting the budget. I mean, I've also seen organizations that the CEO just, of course, he has the giant, just like, give me 10,000 naira there. Whatever, whether that is, okay, just do this. Whether that is in line with what has been budgeted on, it's not his business. So the acceptance is a major challenge when it comes to budgeting and effective budgeting. That communication is also very important. How is it important? Some people say that we don't know how my activities or how what I do affects the bottom line of the organization. So if the guy has actually been, if the guy has been, has been in the loop as to how whatever he or she is doing affects the bottom line of the organization, that would help to effectively manage the budget, or manage the budget as it is. Say, for example, the guy at the security stand, the guy doesn't know that the way he or she attends to customers also affects the locking in of the customers and also the patronage of the customers. If the guy is rude to the customer, the person may not know that it will affect the sales of the organization. And if it affects the sales of the organization can actually fold up. So communication is also important in effective budgeting. Every individual, every member in the entity must understand that this is what the company is running with as far as this year is concerned. And I want to say on this call that budget must be attached to the KPI of every member of an entity. By doing that, more effective, people are waking up every day, looking at the budget, asking necessary questions as to how budgets can be met and as to how things can be done to meet budget per time. I mean, there are organizations that probably revenue segment is reducing, and everybody is just thinking, what can we do to save this revenue line? Strategies can come out of the place, not even, it can even come from somebody that is out, that is not in that particular section, to, on things that would help to increase the revenue segment and the performance of such segments. So communication is also very important. One of the challenges is also time factor. One of the attributes of an effective budget is SMART. What is SMART? A budget must be specific, it must be measurable, it must be achievable, it must be realistic, and it is time bound. You can't tell me that, the year is running to an end, this is October, you have a budget of 500 million, and as at this time you have only made 100 million. It will take a miracle for the organization to make the negative variance or variance of 400 million in 2 months. So, and this time factor is one of the major challenges. Budgets are time bound, and because they are time bound, when it is being set, the person setting the budget must be very much conscious of the time limit. You will not come up with the budget that you know well that you can't even achieve it in 3 years, and you are planning to achieve it in a year. That is like you are building in the castle. You are building castle in the air. So time factor is also a major challenge. Is a major challenge. Excuse me. I haven't talked about the challenge of member and stakeholder. I've talked about the solution to that. Also about the communication. Now I talked about the time factor. The last one is setting the targets and goal. When it comes to setting the target and goal, is also a major challenge. When setting target and goal, budget centers revenue and cost alike. Most of the time, they are not holistic in setting the target. If they are holistic enough in setting the target, it would help to resolve issues with budgeting and budgetary control. Just a little recap. Budgetary controls are measures put in place to achieve a set goal. Are measures put in place to achieve a set goal at minimum. I mean, it is allowed to achieve more than the goals, but at minimal, the goals must be achieved. So setting the target is one of the major challenges. If you don't set the goals, what is the purpose of the budget? When we are talking about financial planning, we'll talk more about one of the major objectives of financial planning, which is to maximize the wealth of the owners of the company. We'll talk more about that under financial planning. So how do we salvage this challenge of effective budgeting? Goals and targets must be well set. Once the goals are set, budget will be effective. And once the budget is effective, achieving the budget or achieving the set goals will not be a problem at all. I also like to just go to the steps to effective budgeting. Of course, one of the number one thing to do when you are setting your budget, number one is you need to plan and prepare. After planning and preparing, the next thing is to set your priorities. Of course, I said earlier that he who fails to plan, and it's a general quote, plans to fail. So you need to plan and prepare. And planning and prepare is setting your goals and your targets. Having planned and prepared, you need to set your priorities. Not everything is important by time. Some things are time bound. Some things, if you don't do them now, you become a market follower. So having planned and prepared, you also need to set your priorities. And of course, we are talking about what? Inflow and outflow here. Having set your priorities in their order of importance, you also need to what? Pay for your priorities. You are going to a business and you need to do some advertising. For you to advertise, you need to pay. You know that people need to know this business. People need to know about this product. People need to know about this particular service and branding. So having set your priorities, you need to also pay for the priorities so that that can help to achieve the budgeting. Having paid for your priorities, the next thing is to implement the plans. And I would like to add one other step to it, which is evaluation of budgeting. Because having implemented your plans, you also need to evaluate. If you don't evaluate, you will not know if the implementation has actually helped to achieve the set target or not. And that is very important in budgeting and budgetary control. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So at this point, we're done with budgeting and we'll be moving to financial planning. If you have any questions, please type it in the chat session right there so that we can pick it up after the session and we can attend to it. So if you have any questions, please drop your questions down there for us. We're going to be moving to financial planning. And if there's anything I've learned thus far, it's that no matter how passionate or committed you are to your business, if it does not make money, that business is not open to investment. What are investors looking at? They are looking at your financials. They are seeing if it is viable for them to bring in money. What are even your investors could either be equity investors, could be debt investors. If a bank wants to give you a loan, if it's a venture capitalist that wants to give you something, wherever you want to access some kind of funds for your business, they want to be sure that your business is viable for them. They want to be sure that there's an assurance that your business can be able to pay back the money that it's borrowing. And if it's an investor that is looking at equity, they want to be very sure that they can make returns for the money they are putting into your business. Meaning that the investors you have on ground, your business has to be viable for them, even before you think of bringing in new people into the business. How do you plan the finances of the business? What are the tools required? How do we navigate financial planning when we're looking at profitability of business, when we're looking at sustainability, because it's believed that a business is a going concern. How do we navigate all of these journeys? That is what we're going to be discussing next. And first of all, we're going to be introducing financial planning as what it is. So we're going to be putting a description, a definition to financial planning. Yes, Damilare, over to you.
Yeah, Thank you, Christina. What is financial planning? I said earlier that budgeting and financial planning are subsets of financial management. And what is planning? Let me start from that. Planning is simply a gap between where you are and where you are going. What does that mean? Presently, you are in Oshodi and you are going to Yaba. What is the plan there? The plan is, I am in Oshodi now. How do I get to Yaba? I want to get to Yaba, right? So that is the gap between where you are and where you want to go or where you want to get to. Another question when it comes to planning is, how do I get there? What do I need to get there? How soon will I get there? Right? How do you get there? You can start to check. By checking, just get 2 bottles of Lacasera or 2 bottles of Coke, right? To give you some glucose. You walk down to Yaba. Another thing is you can actually take a bike from Oshodi to Yaba, right? You can also board the bus from Oshodi to Yaba. You can also go on a bicycle. So planning simply means the gap between where you are and where you are going, how to get there, and what you need to get there. That is planning. Now to financial planning. Oluwadamilare Arababi 2020 said that financial planning is planning what you need to get what. What you need to get what. I'm going to talk more on the background Christina gave on financial planning. You know, what do you need to get what? You want to go into a business, right? You want to start selling retail, you want to start selling clothes in wholesale, okay? What do you need to start this business? That is financial planning. And when you're talking of what you need to start such business, there are 2 parts to it, which I'm going to explain later. You can either go by what we call equity or debt. I'm going to explain this to everyone later. But before I go further, let me give the suitable background foundation to financial planning as it is. Having said that, financial planning is planning what you need to get what, right? You are planning what you need. What do you need to start a business? That is financial planning. How much do you need to start a business? That is financial planning. Do note that I said under budgeting that you need to attach numbers, you need to attach figures to your plans to make it a budget. The same thing for financial planning. Okay, it must be backed up with what? Numbers and figures. That is when it is what? It must be quantitative. That is when it is what? Financial in nature. Now, let me also mention this definition. Financial plan is the process of framing objectives, policies, procedures, programs, and budgets regarding the financial activities of an entity. You all agree with me that, among other things, the primary reason for going into any type of business is to make money, is to maximize profit. That now means that planning what you need to get what, the bottom line is to maximize that thing you need to get what. You want to go into a particular business, you need to rent an apartment, you need to furnish the apartment, okay, you need to set up some infrastructure. Those are the things you need, right? Those are the what you need, excuse me. What do you need to get this location, suitable business location, infrastructure, setting up the office? This is financial planning. And you agree with me that this is quite different from budgeting. Why is it different from budgeting? Budgeting is more of putting controls in place to achieve a set goal. For financial planning, you are planning how to set up an establishment. And when we are talking of setting up an establishment or an ongoing establishment, you are looking at how to source for capital. And when you are looking for how to source for capital, there are 2 major ways. You either set up your capital through equity or through debt. And of course, we have other explanations for equity, and we also have other explanation for what? For debt. So I take it a step further. What are the let me still try to give some background there. We talk about equity. What is equity? Equity is what we call ownership of an entity. So when you have an equity in an establishment, let me even put it this way: equity is also the same thing as capital. So capital simply talks about the ownership in an establishment, or the money used in what setting up an establishment. So equity here simply means that what you become part of the owner of the organization, and that invariably means, just as I was saying earlier, that the primary purpose of any establishment is to maximize the wealth of the owners. If you have an equity in an entity, you are part of the owners of such entity, and because you're part of the owners of the entity, whatever the bottom line is saying, you are a partaker of whatever the bottom line is saying. Now the other side to it, which is debt. What is debt? Debt is an obligation of an entity to an external party. This simply means that you go all out to borrow to set up the organization with the cost of capital. The cost of capital here is the interest that will be paid on whatever is being borrowed to set up the business or for expansion. Now, let me take it a step backward. Now, when we talk about financial planning can happen in three ways. One, to start a new business. Two, to start a new venture. What do I mean by new venture? You can decide to expand your business. That means that if before now, your business had two revenue lines, right, or two operating segments, and you're like, what if we had this third operating segment? I mean, so what do you need to set up the third operating segment? By calculating what you need to set up the third operating segment, you can either raise the capital to set up that third operating segment, okay, either by equity or by debt. And when we talk about debt could be short term, it could be medium term, it could be long term. Are we together? So that is the second operating this thing. The third one is, it is possible that an entity is also approaching liquidation. So in such situation, when an entity is approaching liquidation, so as to salvage that situation, okay, the company can decide to expand. Like, for example, when the CBN increased the capitalization of the financial institution, the banks, to 25 billion. Some of them raise capital through equity so as to meet that capital base. Why? Because their capital base has been eroded by non-performing loans, meaning that the companies, the banks were at the verge of what? Collapsing. So as not to collapse, what did they do? They had to source for what? Not source for capital. Because even at that point, sourcing for debt wasn't a better option. And let me also ask on this, let me also add here, and this is a technical question that I know that at one point or the other, regardless of your profession, whether financial or not, this would help. If you are faced with a decision on whether to set up an establishment, or whether to expand an establishment, or whether to sustain an establishment, if you have the option of either equity or debt, I will explain the two, and I will tell you the one I feel is advisable per time. Equity makes the people owners of the organization, right? That means you are entitled to them, okay? Or you are, yeah, let me use that word, as long as the company exists. But there's a caveat. The caveat is, when the company is not making profit, they cannot complain. But the other side, which is debt, you have an obligation to pay the person cost of capital, and the cost of capital here is the interest at a particular time. So whether the company is making profit or not, you must pay the person you took the loan, or the entity you took the loan or the debt from, interest at a particular time. Now, what is the good side to it? Once you are done settling that debt, you become the owner of whatever you have set up. And that takes us back to financial planning, as said by Daniel in 2021, that financial planning is planning what you need to get what. So in planning what you need to get what, that means that once you get that debt and you have paid the person both the cost of capital and the principal at the end of the period, that simply means that Once you are done paying it, you become the owner of whatever you have made from the business going forward. But for equity, as long as the person is an holder of equity in that organization, you owe that person benefits at the end of the period, either quarterly, either monthly, either yearly. And the benefits we are talking about here, either dividend or bonus, which can also be called script issue. So when you are starting up a business, you want to expand the frontiers of your business, you are always faced with either equity or debt. And I can say here that once you know that the business is viable, you have done your analysis, personal analysis, looking at the external environment, looking at the SWOT analysis, and we're talking about best, we're talking about external factors that affect your organization. We're talking about the political, economical, social, cultural, technological, ecological, and the legal. You have holistically studied and critiqued them so that you are 100% sure that this business is viable. You have also looked at your SWOT analysis. What is the value I'm bringing to the table? Once you have done those two analyses and you are very sure, more than 100%, that this business is viable, I would always advise that you go with debt. Why am I advising that you go with debt? I'm advising that you go with debt because I know well that once you are done settling the debt, whatever you have amassed with the debt is your own, and you can grow the business using that. And I would also like to say at this point that if you don't have your financial planning in place, you cannot get funds through these two means I just mentioned. You are working up to me, trying to put me to bring some funds, either as an equity holder or as a debt holder into the organization. I need to see the financials. The financials must tell me something that this business is actually viable. And that's why I mentioned your SWOT analysis and your personal analysis. And also, if the plan is to expand the front end of your business, the figures must tell me beyond reasonable doubt that it is a viable investment for me to put my funds into, either as an equity holder or as a debt holder. So financial planning is important to the survival of any organization, be it a one-man business. In fact, the woman that is selling roasted plantain, the woman also needs financial planning. Many people have met me, they have this business idea. The first question I ask them is, what are your financial plans? If you don't have financial plan, as far as I'm concerned, your business idea is good for nothing. Why? You can't come and tell me about a financial plan, just trying to wrap me into putting some without telling me things that I'll be interested, because what I'm actually putting in is financial in nature. So I need something to tell me that the financial aspect I'm committing into this establishment is actually safe, and I know whether either as a debt holder or equity holder, I'm sure that I will get my returns and my wealth to be maximized by the organization. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was an amazing deep dive into what financial planning is. And thank you for putting us through the different analysis when it comes to PESTEL and when it comes to SWOT. I believe this has really improved. This has really helped somebody out there on this team. I'm already seeing some questions, and I will appreciate if you keep dropping more. In the chat section, please drop your questions for us. We'll be attending to them as soon as we can. Thank you. So, Dami, back to you. When we're looking at financial planning, you've said a lot. You've explained to us one of the objectives that we get to achieve is because obviously we know who we are targeting, who is our investor, either on the debt end or the equity end. What are the other objectives that financial planning has to play? What are the other objectives that has to do with financial planning that we can discuss together today?
All right, thank you so much. I have the objective of financial planning. I hope I'm not too fast. Sorry. Objective of financial planning. Number one, you need to determine your capital requirement. What do you mean by capital requirement? There are three aspects to this. You can either decide the capital you need is for a short term, medium term, or long term. I'm going to explain this, and then I'm going to explain this in the light of what I said about debt and equity. I said earlier that if you are faced, with setting up an entity, you have done a financial planning, and it is even your financial planning that helps you to know the capital requirement. What does this mean? There was a time I just sat down in the office and just came to that. Actually discussing with a colleague. Look at this business of delivery, dispatch riders. I just looked at, I asked her some questions. Okay, how much does it take to get a bike? Okay, how much does it take to run a bike per day? How much does it take data, blah, blah, blah. And I did my calculation, I was like, so if I set up this business, I get my cash flow. Okay, so this is what will come in on day, month on month, week on week. And I was like, okay, so that means if I put 500,000 into this thing, I can get my money back in the next 6 months. Wow. So get my money back in the next 6 months has already told me conservatively that if I borrow, I should be looking at returning the money in 6 months. Financial planning has helped me to achieve that. Without financial planning, I wouldn't know how long it would take to recoup my initial outlay. Note, this still takes us back to what? Either equity or debt. Equity is almost forever, right? Debt is after a particular period of time. So I cannot look at it. Why should I bring in Damlar into this business and we'll enjoy the profit for the rest as long as this business exists? Or I borrow money from Damlar and promise him 10 and we agree 5% monthly interest. So once I'm done paying the loan in 6 months, the bike is mine. Everything I make after then is mine. I can even double my productivity and I get more and I don't owe Damlar any money again. Yeah, what has helped me to come up with that conclusion? My financial plan. So financial planning helps us to know the capital requirement. It helps us to know whether we should go for a short-term loan or short-term facility or short-term capital, right? Medium-term or long-term. Financial planning really helps what? To know that and know that well. Because if you don't have the financial planning in place, as what you need to get all these things done, you cannot know the capital requirements. Also, the capital structure. I also said this earlier. There are entities today that are either purely equity, purely debt, or partly equity and partly debt. What does this mean? An entity will be purely equity-based if all the capital in the establishment are equity, meaning that there is no debt in their statement of financial position. And this invariably means that what? Nothing has been borrowed to run the organization. What do I mean by an entity being, okay, so let me give an example in that regard, right? I want to go into the delivery business I mentioned earlier, and I need about 3 million to start that business. Fistana, how far now? How much can I get from it? Okay. Like, I mean, I give Fistana the financial, look at the 6 months, we get that means for the rest of the estimated life of this motorcycle, we'll just be sharing profits. What do you think about that? Myself and Christina will be sharing whatever the bottom line says based on the agreed percentage. That is for equity. I can also approach Christina. Christina, how far now? This business, so what do you think? Looking at it now, if you won't put your money in FD, you can't get more than 3%, even on top 50 million, right? I mean, what can you do now? Okay, will you give me 4%? I can't give you 4%. I'll give you 5%. Okay, 5%. I'll give you 5% interest month on month, right? And I will pay the whole money in 6 months. Wow, that means that as soon as I'm done paying Christina, I am debt free. That simply means that setting up that business is solely on debt. Also, on the other side, I've explained the equity, wholly equity. I've explained wholly debt. Now I'm going to partly equity, partly debt. Partly equity, partly debt simply means that Christina come. So this 5 million you want to give me for this business now, I'm going to give you interest month on month for the next 6 months on 2.5. What do you think? And the remaining 2.5 will be equity on the organization. Let me also chip in at this point. There's something we call grace period. What is the concept for grace period in the financial space? We call it moratorium. What is moratorium? Moratorium simply means that when you borrow to finance a project, okay, you are given the grace period of a particular period not to commit anything. Why? Because there's something we call gestation period. When you set up a business, okay, we all know that the business will not pick up immediately. So asking you to pay back the loan or the debt immediately is not what profitable will not be profitable or will not help the cash flow of the organization. So it is always best, it's always advisable to do what? To get facility, okay, so that, especially for a startup, it's always advisable to get facility that would give you, that will avail you the opportunity to hold on to the money, okay, the money in the business for a particular period before you now start what? Repaying back. So with these three scenarios I've mentioned, wholly equity, wholly debt, partly equity, and partly debt, which simply means that the 5 million that person is bringing to the business, okay, she can decide to do 3.5 million for debt, depending on her own cash flow too. Remember, Christiana too is an entity, okay, either personal or probably the CEO or the owner of also an organization. So 3.5 million for debt and 1.5 million for what equity, which means that at the end of a particular period, I need to make sure I've taken care of the 3.5 million based on the agreed period and the terms and conditions of the facility. While the 1.5 million makes Christiana an equity holder in the organization, and this invariably means that whatever the bottom line says for the organization at a particular time or at every point in time must be shared, or Christiana has a benefit, okay, has a benefit in whatever the organization makes. So one of the objectives of financial planning is also to determine the capital structure. What does financial planning also helps to do? It also helps to frame the financial policy. What is financial policy? For example, cash control. What is cash control? Cash control simply means that people will say that cash is king. People will also say that it is not good to keep your cash idle. By not keeping your cash idle, you are saying that, you know what happened? I collected 5 million from Christiana. What we need to do is in phases. In the first phase, okay, we need 1.5 million. Meaning that, and I know well that if I don't collect the 5 million from Christiana at the beginning, Christiana may give me story in the next 4 months. What do? I collect 5 million from Christiana, plug the 1.5 million in the first phase, and put the 3.5 million remaining in another investment, a secure investment. Please take note. So that while I'm waiting for the second phase, where I will need the next 2 million naira, okay, the money will have also yielded something for me to plug into the business. So this cash control is very important. You don't keep the cash out, you also make what? Cash available. Financial planning also helps your lending and the borrowing. What does that mean? I mean, I've collected 5 million from Christiana, I've put some in investment, pending when it will be needed. It also helped my deal, because it was, remember, I mentioned that it is financial planning that helps us to know whether you want your entity to be equity, solely equity based, wholly equity, okay, or wholly debt, or partly equity or partly debt. So this framing your financial policy also helps to a very large extent, okay. I mean, financial planning also helps to a very large extent in what? Framing your financial policy. I will talk about framing financial policy in your cash control, okay, the cash you have in your custody. I'm talking about cash control. It can also cash in investment, or cash at bank, or cash at bank. It can also frame your, when we talk about cash control, it's a kind of two sides. There's something called operating cycle. Let me just take it this deep. When we talk about operating cycle simply talks about the management of two aspects of the organization. I'm talking, no, three aspects now. And what are the three aspects? We have the receivable, we have the payable, and we have the inventory. Receivable before the advent of IFRS used to be debtors. Payable before the advent of IFRS used to be creditors. Inventory before the advent of IFRS used to be what? Stock. Now, the management of these three, how does it affect your cash policy? Number one, your payable. When you borrow money, how often do you plan? How soon do you plan to pay back? Right? Remember, your planning to pay back determines your cash flow. Okay, and when you borrow money, it doesn't necessarily mean you borrow cash. You can also buy whatever you are selling on credit from your supplier, or services are rendered to you on credit. What is the receivable talking about? Receivable is talking about the money you are expecting. Okay, people are owing you. You have rendered service, so your management of that also affects your cash control. What is the third part? The third part is also your inventory. Okay, how are you keeping your inventory? Are you stocking so much that you can sell? If you are stocking so much that you can sell, you are doing my stock for the organization, because your inventory cannot be easily be turned to cash. So you either accept, okay, you should either keep more cash than your inventory, and this also depends on the volatility of your inventory. Now, what is We also financial resources. Of course, financial planning helps us to do what the bottom line is. We are what are uncertain, and of course, we know that resources are scarce, financial and what have you. So, if resources are scarce, maximizing scarce financial resources would be as a result of what financial plan. And okay, if you don't engage the financial plan, but scarce financial resources, and management of scarce financial resources means that you know what to do, right? You know what you need the money to do, and you are doing what, and you are committing the financials into it. Having known the capital requirements, whether it's you need the money for short term, okay, medium term and long term, or you want to know the capital structure, whether what then frame your financial policy. And that's about your cash policy, right? Cash control, lending, borrowing, and your managing your scarce financial resources. Thank you, Christina. Christina. Okay. Okay, so I'm done with the update for financial planning.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's, I can see on the same slide you've shared with us, importance of financial planning. Should we run this or?
Okay,
yes.
Okay, so okay, that's fine. Okay, so what are the importance of financial planning? Financial planning helps in making growth and expansion programs, which helps in the long-term survival of the organization. I said that earlier, that when you are talking about financial planning, okay, financial planning to start with should be a day-to-day thing, okay, in an entity. And I also said when it is tilted towards raising either equity or debt, okay, it comes up, either when you are starting up a new business, or you are trying to expand the frontiers of your business. By expanding the frontier, that's the meaning that you want to go into another revenue segment, or you are taking up additional projects in the organization, and also the company is heading towards folding up. What do? You can also look at financial planning. How can we rescue this company from what? From liquidating. So by doing that, financial planning helps us what? In the long run, survival of the entity as we can have them. What does it also help us to do? Financial planning helps in ensuring stability and profitability. Because there's no you plan and you will not be stable. Before you do your financial plan, you're already asking yourself, how can we increase our profitability? Right? You have done a financial plan, you know well that in 6 months, without your borrowing, you can be cool, you can be paid. So you know that after 6 months, we will start making profits. So if you are not doing a financial plan, you will not know how long it will take for the business to start what? Breaking even, talk less of making profit, right? And of course, we know well that the stability of an organization is measured also by its what? By its profitability. Because invariably, I don't want to go into financial jargons now, but those who are not financial experts here, I mean finance professionals here. The bottom line, okay, which is profitability, invariably affect the stability of organization through what we call the SOFP, financial position. And a component in the financial position is the equity and liability component. The equity component, which can also be what the shareholders fund, is comprises of what? The equity, the retained earnings, and the retained earnings there is the accumulated profits, okay, for as long as the business has been existing. And note that the retained earning here could be negative and also positive. So it will be negative as a result of what the bottom line is saying. And when it is positive, it's also a function of what the bottom line is saying. Okay, and once we have this can be replica of this can either be cash or what, or receivable in the non-current asset or the current asset was segment of the discipline of financial. So financial planning really helps in ensuring stability, strengthening the financial position and profitability. Talking about the financial performance or the bottom line of the organization. What does it also help us to do? It helps in ensuring a reasonable balance between outflow and inflow of funds. How does this come to play? Once you have done financial planning well, you know, okay, and you can even in your why? Because you have done financial planning, you have an idea what your inflow will be and what your outflow will be. Why? Because you have done your financial planning. What does it also help us to do? Financial planning helps us to curtail uncertainties due to what? Changing market trends. What is this talking about? Recall that at the beginning of this financial planning section, I talked about financial planning with respect to you doing your pest analysis and your SWOT analysis. Business help. They help. So this thing I want to do. How can it be affected politically? How can it be affected economically? Right? I mean, we are spinning all over the place in Nigeria now because of exchange rates. Right? You want to start a business now, you are looking at the business. Is this business the kind of business that relies so much on getting raw materials domestically or imported raw materials? If the moment it is imported, colleagues, you should know that your business will face all manners of uncertainties economically. We all know the volatility of our exchange rate, right? So looking at that, doing your business analysis very well and your SWOT analysis, right, would really help. Doing that under financial planning would really help to protect uncertainties due to the changing market trend. And when I talk about changing market trend, I can also take it to 5 quarters down. We have the threat of entrance. We talk about threat from close substitute. We talk about the bargaining power of the supplier. We talk about the bargaining power of the customer. We also talked about competitive rivalry. These are external factors, okay, also under SWOT and PESTEL that affect the organization. So if the company has really planned the financials well, and you also agree with me that when we're talking about this financial planning, okay, we are also talking about qualitative factors that numbers are attached to. Are we together? And attaching numbers to the qualitative factor will also help us to convert the number and also consider it in our financial planning. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Finally, before we leave and before we start attending to questions, I'd like to know what are the things that a startup business should be considering? Just a minute. So when I want to start up a business, I know you had mentioned about a logistic business earlier on. So as a business, I'm about to commence, or not even commence should be the word, I'm about to even think of creating an idea. What should I know before going into any business? That's the word. What should I know before going into business?
All right, thank you. I think I have a response to that, and I have it divided into these 4 segments. And what are the segments? Number 1, to everyone in this section that is interested in starting a business, I want you to take notes of these 4 and many more, but basically these 4. You need to really, really understand them. You must understand first and foremost that your business, you must understand what we call business or legal entity. And once I understand that, whatever I know, I started a business with my money. Once I've committed my money into the business, the 2 questions I will ask myself: am I borrowing this business this money, or I'm bringing in this money as an equity, despite the fact that it is my business. Once I separate the business, whatever I'm putting into the business, okay, will be treated. It was my money before I put it in. But once the money is brought into the business, the money becomes the business, and the money must be treated as such. So one thing you must understand is, once you are starting up a business, okay, one of the things that has ruined businesses that I know of, okay, and many more that I don't even know of, is owners of businesses, they are unable to separate themselves from the business. Someone will just call accountant, hello, today, send 2 million to my account now. And today, just thinking of going to use the 2 million to buy an inventory to meet the order of one of their customers. I cannot say, madam, this is what I want to do. The madam will show Sunday, right? The woman has used the money to go and extravagant spending. And the customer that walked up to you today that they need this and they cannot get it, they go elsewhere. The whole place is competitive. So you must understand that you are different from your business. Whether the capital of your business is 20,000, once you are committed that 20,000 to the business, the money is no longer yours. Why? Because Shukudi is different from Shukudi and Sons enterprise. Also, you must also prioritize the business needs. I've related with startups, partial consultancy, that didn't prioritize their needs and they ended up holding up. You don't have so much to play with. You have either gotten the funds you use in starting the business, either through equity or debt. You must only spend on the things you need, no extravagant spending. You are not trying to impress anybody. You want to grow a business, you want to expand the business, you want to contribute to the society, you want to contribute to the society, you want to contribute to the economy, you want to contribute your own quota to the GDP. And as also, you must prioritize the needs of the business. Once you have prioritized the needs, then you don't prioritize the needs to affect whatever you spend on. Don't spend on what you should spend on. Spend on what the business needs at a particular time. Once you can do that, I can assure you the business will grow and even grow more than you ever thought. The third here is account management. Account management. I have a business I'm doing. The same account my salary goes into. So I just get alert now. I don't know which is which. Okay, 20,000 yesterday, another person paid, my salary just entered now. Everything is just better than me, I'm just spending. What is the work of my business per time? I cannot tell you that at my fingertips. Okay, but if the account is managed so that you may not have registered the business because of tax implication, okay, you can have 3 accounts. You have one for your salary, you have one in UBA or Stanbic or any bank designated for your business, so that you know the account you are giving them in your office to pay your salary to. You know the account you give your customers for the payment of the service you render to them or the goods you are selling to them. So that account management is also important. Why? Because so that you don't mix up, you start giving them 20,000 2 weeks ago, right? And you sell, people pay into it. You can at a glance, okay, including your equity, inventory, excuse me. You can at a glance know how the business was as appreciated. Also, good record keeping. If you don't keep good records, you cannot also know how far or how good your business, how healthy, let me use that word, how healthy your business is. Good record keeping is important. You have an Excel sheet, you have a Google sheet, okay, you sold this day, so you can, even using that, when you want to expand, the behavior of your business activity, if you are keeping good record in the past, can also help, okay, for you to extrapolate or project whatever you want, whatever the performance will be in the next 2 to 3 years. And that would even help you, especially when you want to expand. You ask yourself, if I can continue at this pace, in the next 2 to 3 years, I want to achieve this. Do I need any external funds to achieve this? If I continue on this at this pace, and I'm not taking from, and I don't take from this money, okay, I should be able to achieve this. So that means to achieve this or to get to a worth of around $5 billion, okay, if I continue at this, I will not need either debt or equity to get to this point. Why? Because you are keeping your record well, and you can for sure talk about, you can for sure foresee, or you can say, okay, that in the next 3 to 4 years, this is what this business would worth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Larry. It's been an amazing session with you. We have been able to take everyone through budgeting and we have taken them through financial planning. Thank you so much as we have come to the end of this program. We have some questions already that have been waiting in the chat box because people are anxious, people want to know more. So I will start with the first question we received. The question was that, is budgeting critical for the success of a business?
Yes. Why is it critical? If there is no budget, what are you running with? The sales guy will just walk into the office anyhow. What is KPI? Key performance indicator, right? The budgeting helps to put a particular, in fact, no, let me put it this way. KPI is the primary purpose of any organization. I understand that people will say that their goal is to do this. Primarily, one of the major people going to business is to maximize profit. So if there is no budgeting in place, okay, we talk about your inflow and your outflow, you are running with nothing. Budgeting puts everyone on their toe. If there is no budgeting, what do you tell your salesperson? Why do you even need a salesperson to start with? Why do you need sales strategy? Why do you need to strategize? Budgeting is the prelude to whatever energy you want to put into achieving the KPI in bracket now, maximizing the wealth of the owners of the organization. Budgeting is the prelude to whatever energy you want to put in, either in terms of strategy, either in terms of KPI of all, including the owner of the organization. For example, we have the CEO now. If there is no budget, what would the board hold the CEO responsible for? Right? If there's no budget, what would the CEO hold the head of sales responsible for? If there's no budget, what would the head of sales hold his team members or his or her team members responsible for? If there's no budgeting, what will the head of production hold the manufacturer people in production responsible for? So budgeting is critical. If there's anything more than critical, it is critical from the least in the organization to the apex in the organization, which is the board of directors. Because note that the board of directors, they are also responsible to the shareholders. So budgeting is key. This puts everybody on their toes to achieving maximizing the wealth of the organization. Thank you.
Not to sound cliche, but it's a popular saying out there that if you fail to plan, it simply means you plan to fail. So when you want to consider not to budget, just know that you have also considered to put that business in jeopardy. I wouldn't want to use the word failure just straight up. We have another question right here. The question says, what is the role of inflation in financial planning and budgeting? It says that we have mentioned the need to factor in debt and equity into budgets. But with the state of the Nigerian economy at the moment, how do we factor inflation and the devaluation of the currency into a budget?
Yeah, thank you so much. I said in the course of talking about the importance of financial planning, when it comes to budgeting, let me start from budgeting, the role of inflation. We all know that inflation in Nigeria is something we call, there's even something we call, I can't remember now. There's a concept in economics we call particular inflation, right? And this is an inflation that affects both inflation and unemployment. I will see if I can remember in the course of this explanation. So, how do you bring the inflation into place in coming up with your budget? To bring inflation into place, we know well that inflation at the moment is in double digits. Okay? And this is what I tell people. I would rather be conservative in my revenue, okay, and be ambitious in my cost. And this is bringing inflation into place. Why am I ambitious in my cost? Being ambitious in my cost doesn't mean I'm not going to squeeze, the hell out of expenditure. Because when it comes to spending, there are measures put in place to make sure that what we are spending on, we all know that inflation in Nigeria at the moment is on double digits. So if it is double digits, effort must be put in place to make sure that when we are doing our budget, inflation is factored in. Say, for example, I want to budget for next year. I look at it. Okay, how much is this? How much did this? What I'm talking about an expense line now. How much did this thing cost in January this year? Okay, how much did it cost now? What is the percentage increase between January and now? I can use that as the starting point from my January 2022 to December 2022 budget and put the same percentage in inflation on that same expense line. See, true. Another side to this, you will also agree with me that inflation in Nigeria is directly related to our exchange rate volatility. Even the woman selling them roasted corn at the bus stop is telling you corn is expensive because of dollar. Yeah, because USD has literally affected everything about Nigeria economy. So that also simply means that you can as well, if where you work or if the budget you are doing is with respect to an entity that depends so much on importation of raw materials, you need to look at the trend of the exchange rate. Some people have postulated that in the next the dollar will get to 1,000 naira per dollar. You can also use that to you can also use that to form the basis for your expenditure, right? For next year or for a particular time. So looking at inflation and exchange rate, in the case of Nigeria, inflation and exchange rate, they go together. And the reason why inflation is rampant in Nigeria, okay, is because of what? The exchange rate volatility. I remember sometimes late early last year, dollar was still exchanging for about 3 and something naira. But the story is different now. So if I'm to plan my financials, I would actually use the previous trend to project my budget for next year. So inflation and exchange rate, in the case of Nigeria, they go together. They are husband and wife. We cannot separate them because it has been confirmed, and you all confirm with me, you all agree with me that exchange rate has contributed massively to the astronomical increase in the inflation in this dear country.
Thank you. I can also see a question regarding how you can access this presentation after the program. Your registered email that you shared with us, the recording of this will be sent to it, as well as the slides. So thank you. I hope that answers the question. There's another question right here. It says, is there a model for SME budgeting in the various scenarios where a business is fully funded without outside financing, where a business is financed by others, and then where we're looking at mixed, that's debt and equity?
Okay.
I want to believe that this person is trying to refer to the different financing options we've explained earlier. And the person is trying to ask about if we have a model that they can adopt for budgeting for these different.
There is no model. The bottom line is what your financial planning is saying, okay, would help to know, okay, which of the two to go for. Okay, if you know well that this business you are looking into, okay, or you are planning to go into, may not break even till probably the next 5-7 years, equity may be advisable. Why? Because for equity holder, when you don't pay them a dividend or script issue, they will not scream. They are equity. Okay, they go through the ups and downs of the organization with there's something called business cycle in economics. Okay, we have the growth part, okay, we have the recession, we have the choke, we have the depression, we have the surplus period, okay, and then we have the boom. Thank you. Do you understand? So for a business that you know well after doing your financial planning, okay, that in the next 5-10 years the business will not break even. Let me sound this one in here. Equity is advisable. How do you even know the one to go for? Your financials will tell you, your financial planning will tell you that. Looking at this, this gestation period, we may not be able to get this next. Looking at the cost we are plugged in, so we put this 6 years. So I'll now be paying somebody interest for the next 6 years. And also, if your cost of capital is also part of your projection, that okay, you can still afford to be paying the cost of capital while the business has not even broken even, fine. But in some situation, equity is advisable. You can't keep paying interest for the next 7 years. But I can collect Christiana's fund, we are owners together, and not pay Christiana anything on the bottom of the business, but is now getting rosy. So what your financials, okay, is saying determines whether, okay, to go with either equity or what, or debt. I don't know if I've been able to answer the person's question. So for SME, okay, go ahead.
We have another question here.
Okay, go ahead. I want to believe I answered that person's question. Is the person clear?
I hope so. The person hasn't dropped another one. So
okay, so if the person is not clear, please feel free to raise other concerns you have.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next question, which I believe will be our last question for the day, says that the question here says, just a minute, please. If a company decides to run a zero budget, is it okay to still share last year numbers just as a guide?
Okay, thank you. You call it zero budget, and which is what is practiced in Nigeria today. For an entity, okay, you know, for zero budget, we are saying that whatever is done in a particular year ends with that year, okay? The following year has its own reality. But you also agree with me that there is a trend, right? There is a trend. As much as each year, and let me say this, even at this point, because of the volatility, okay, or the uncertainty, the rate of uncertainties in the economy, okay, or in the business space, most companies even review their budgets quarterly now. Because the reality in April is just totally different from the reality in the first 3 months or first quarter of the year. So every period has its own reality, okay? If you feel, you know, adoption is personal, you can adopt zero-based budget, but you also agree with me that zero-based budget has its own limitation. So I do advise, and this is what I do, there is no point starting anything. I can as well benchmark, or I can as well use my performance, okay, or my budget for the immediate past year, okay, for the present year. Now, in my assumptions, I will now use the present reality in my assumption in either to grow whatever I had in the previous period, okay, or to hold it constant. Does that answer the question? So zero-based budget, you can decide to use it. I'm not saying it is wrong. I'm not saying it is right. But the bug that is there is, if you want to use zero-based budget, you are simply saying that all what happened in the previous year or year, immediate year, is not your business. And you also agree with me that trend matters in everything we do, especially when it comes towards budgeting and even financial planning. So getting rid of what happened in the previous year is not really advisable because of the implication of trend. I said you can as well use whatever the performance was in the immediate period, okay, as the starting point, and use the present reality to do what? To grow your assumption. I'm done.
Thanks to Parkway Projects, the organizers of this event. Well, coming to an end of this, you would see that we're sharing the screen already of our product, Bank 3D. Bank 3D is now available on the web, and you can create multiple business accounts on Bank 3D. You can use Bank 3D to receive and confirm payments via bank transfers for your customers. So are you having business challenges, incessant calls from cashiers to confirm payments? Are you receiving fake debit alerts, high transaction fees, and all of the above? Bank 3D is your banking option today. Bank 3D is a product of Parkway Projects, and I'm sure would be giving you so much solutions to your business as that's done mine. As I told you at the beginning of this program that I was going to be running me through with someone that was worthy of having a conversation with. Mr. Damilare has proven it, Mr. Damilare Arabambi has proven it beyond any doubt that yes, if the cap fits, the crown should sit well. We've gone through a journey of budgeting and financial planning together today. I believe that some snippets of this have added value to your business, and I believe some snippets you are deciding now to adopt it in your business. The recordings of this program is available. It will be sent to you via your registered email addresses after the program. Also, if you want to access Mr. Arabambi, he's right there on LinkedIn with the same name, Oluwadamilare Arabambi. You could also access me as Christina Alaini on LinkedIn. Do not forget to follow us at Parkway Projects Limited on LinkedIn. That's the company profile on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for today. I'm so glad to have you, and I'm so glad to have Mr. Damilare. Thank Arabambi. Thank you so much, Mr. Arabambi. It's been working with you today. This, interestingly, ended up being a deep dive into budgeting and financial planning. I believe everyone was blessed by this session. Till next time, everyone, do have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye.